The next mitzvah is the main one we want to do today, which is mitzvah number 73, is to not eat an animal that will die of its wounds within a year. That's called a treifa. An animal that will die of its wounds within, let's say an animal has some sort of, in the laws of kashrus, there are certain animals that are inherently not kosher. So when they shecht an animal, one of the things they do is they check the lungs. They actually inflate the lungs to see if the lungs have any punctures in them. Have you ever heard of the word glat? Glat does not mean super. As some people think, glat kosher, it's super kosher. And glat does not even mean unflawed. Glat means no impediments. It doesn't even mean no impediments. It means specifically smooth. Smooth, not no impediments, smooth. Maybe that's what you meant. That on the lungs of the animal specifically, they check the lungs. If there are any lesions on the lungs, then the animal is still kosher, but it is not considered glat. It is perfectly okay according to halacha to eat that meat, but there is a stringency that many, many people follow, that they will only eat glat meat. Glat means the lungs have been inspected, the lungs are perfectly smooth, or whatever the standard is required in order to be considered smooth, and that meat is called glat. Unfortunately, nowadays, glat is usually, you'll sometimes see a glat kosher pizza shop, right? Because people think it means super kosher or without any risk of something. It doesn't mean that. Yeah, so we talk about, it means smooth. Smooth pizza. Yeah, smooth as opposed to deep dish, right? We have glat and deep dish. So we will talk about in yeshiva world, when you talk about somebody's mind, we talk about, in Yiddish, they say somebody has a glatte cup. Somebody who's a straight thinker and he's not got a distorted mind. We talk about a glatte cup. He's got a smooth mind. He's got a clear mind. In halacha, if the lung has a puncture in it, if it's got a hole in the lung, the entire animal is automatically treif. Cannot eat the animal. Now, there are other injuries or other diseases that an animal may get, which then by projection, and it's a halachic projection, the animal is a treifa, which means that under normal circumstances, the animal will die within the year. And that is forbidden to be consumed by a Jew. That's considered not kosher. Now, one of the ideas behind this is the most basic idea, is that if an animal is going to die within the year, logically there's something wrong with the animal. If anything's going to die within the year, that means it's got some sort of injury or disease. That means there's something wrong with the animal. If it's going to die within the year, right? So something is not as healthy as it should be, and therefore to protect the human being, we are, the Torah says to refrain from eating it. Now that doesn't mean that's why we only eat kosher food. It doesn't mean why we eat kosher food. But the Rambam writes in Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam writes that every mitzvah in the Torah has, if you search for it, you will find a benefit for human beings from the prohibition or from the command. There will be a benefit that you will find. That's what the Rambam writes. That doesn't mean that the benefit is the only reason for the mitzvah. It doesn't mean that the only reason we have this mitzvah is the benefit of the mitzvah, and since we've taken care of trichinosis poisoning, so then you can eat pork. It doesn't mean that. But that is certainly one of the benefits. I heard my doctor told me, my physician told me that there was a young lady developed a parasite in the brain, and she had a parasite in the brain, and she went to a doctor. She had to do surgery, and the surgery was successful. And after the surgery, the doctor said, forgive me, but are you Jewish? Her last name was, something like Bernstein or something. So, she was a little surprised that he's prying into her private. She said, well, as a matter of fact, I am. Why do you ask? She goes, well, I'm just surprised because this particular parasite is something that is generally a result of a lot of pork consumption. I know that Jews don't eat pork, which up until that point she was doing quite a bit of, and now she's a balas tshuva because of that. So that one little musar lesson from the doctor. So there is a benefit to not eating. Now the Rambam says, the Maimonides says, that if you search in the mitzvahs, you will find a benefit. Doesn't mean that that's the reason for this. So one of the commentaries writes that an animal that's going to die in the course of a year, chances are that the animal, there's something that in the health is flawed. Since the health is flawed, so the Torah says, lay off of that animal. That's one of the ideas. That's suggested. Now, more than that, you see, for us, we believe, according to the commentaries, that non-kosher food affects you. What you eat affects your soul. your neshama is affected. That's why the Torah has so many restrictions when it comes to food. You're not allowed to eat. I had a guy here once who told me that his ideal, he became a Baal Tshuva. He said his biggest challenge as a Baal Tshuva was that his favorite meal, he was a meshuggah on seafood, and he said his ideal meal was a shark steak with a side order of, I think, shrimp and clams or something like that. I forgot what it was. That was his meal. He told me he was from the Midwest of the United States. Actually, he was from what do you call it? From Nebraska, farther in the Midwest. And he said growing up, he couldn't wait to make a trip to California because they have the best seafood there. He couldn't wait to go to California. So that was his ideal meal. See, the Torah says to you, no, you can't just indulge in anything you want to indulge. So at one level, the idea of food control is that we have to learn self-control. What food would you say is the symbol of all food? Bread. What's the Hebrew word for bread? Lechem, which is the same root as the Hebrew word milchama, which is war, because that's the battle for a human being. For a human being, the ultimate battle is the battle of food. Food is a major battle. We have two physical battles. There are two physical battles. There's food and there's women. Those are the two physical battles that we have. The dominant one is food, because it's something that we encounter 3 times a day. All right, depending on who your roommate in college was, you probably met guys who encountered it more. But for your normal average person, food is something you wake up in the morning. You got to have breakfast, lunch, supper. They're both battles, and they're both very difficult battles. But food becomes something that, in certain ways, is an easier battle, because food is the battle where we are generally in the area of permissible, and it requires self-control, as opposed to putting something off limits and it's non-negotiable. Nowadays, the truth is, it's really not that difficult, because there are so many. If you're anywhere in the Western world now, there's so many kosher products. It used to be much more difficult. Nowadays, any supermarket in the United States you could buy, you could usually find. Calgary. Okay, Calgary. So you get it. What's that?
Just eat fish.
You can eat fish. Okay, I don't say it's easy, but the test. You know, follow what I'm saying. The test of food is when I'm sitting at a table and I've got kosher food in front of me, I've now got a test of self-control. When you walk into a bar, you know everything in that bar, they are all usher. Right? Everybody in that bar is usher. What you do is then up to you, but at least you know where there's a red line. You know it's all usher. Now, whether or not you have the self-control is something else. But when you're sitting at a table, this is permissible. It's all permissible. The food is kosher, it's all permissible. Now, am I going to overindulge or not? You see, understand that you're activating a different type of control. The Torah is telling you, lechem, it's the battle, and women is a battle also. That's why when Yosef is involved with Mrs. Potiphar, so he says to her, the Torah says that his master let him put him in charge of everything except the bread that he consumes. And Rashi says that's a euphemism for his wife. That means everything is permissible to Yosef in that house. He was in control of everything except Potiphar's wife. That means both food at the literal level, lechem, and women at the euphemistic level is called lechem, because both of those are the milchama. That's the battle that we fight. That's the battle that we're fighting. And therefore, the Torah puts a tremendous amount of time and energy into food. There's a tremendous amount of discussion when it comes to food. So the idea is, because food is something that is so dominant for us. So the commentaries point out like this. Athletes nowadays, even more than when I was growing up, because now they've got it much more scientific, much more research has gone into it. Athletes are given a special diet. They've done high carbs and this and that and the other. They've got all sorts of diets to make the athlete, with all everything that goes into their nutrition. There's a whole nutrition regimen for the athletes. Growing up, you just ate anything. It wasn't when I back in the 60s, 70s. It wasn't the same. It wasn't so specialized. So the same way that an athlete has a regimented diet, somebody at a spiritual level, has a very delicate, sensitive neshama, which Jews have. Therefore, our neshamas have to be fed a special diet. You'll notice that the food that we eat, all the animals we eat are all docile animals. Sheep, goats, cows, these are all docile. We don't eat lion. We don't eat tigers. We don't eat shark. We don't eat any types of birds of prey. very, very docile animals. That's what we eat. Shechita is done in the most painless way possible in order to be able to access the meat, and so on and so forth. So the Torah, I'll get to one second too. So the Torah is what do you call it? That's why so much. There was a guy in Odessa. Did you ever hear of Odessa in Russia, which is now having some troubles? But Or Sameach once opened a branch in Odessa. They actually called it Ordessa. But they had a branch at Odessa because after communism fell, so then the Jewish community started growing again. So they reopened to reestablish the community there. So what happened was they opened up schools, and there was Shechita there in Odessa. Okay, so a visiting rabbi came in, and he met a very old man from the previous generation, an old Jew. And he asked him, about the hechsherim in town. He said the hechsher is very good. The rabbis who give the hechsher, it's a good hechsher, you can eat the meat. Okay. So he started eating meat, and he noticed this old man never eats meat. So he said to him, can I ask you a question? Why, you told me the hechsher is good. He said, yeah, hechsher is very good, but you never eat meat. He says, I don't. And meat is very important in Russia, because where it's cold weather, you have to have the meat. The meat gives you the what do you call it in the body to protect you against the cold. And he noticed he was never eating meat. He said to him, why don't you eat the meat? So the guy said, look, in Russia, every country's got their own their national sport. In America it's baseball, in England it's football, what we call soccer. In Russia it's revolution. Right? The national sport of Russia is revolution. There's always a revolution lurking in Russia, right around the corners. The guy said to him, look, right now we could eat meat. Many years I couldn't eat meat because there was no hechsher. Right now there was a revolution, communism's down, and we could eat meat. He says, I don't know what's going to be in a few years. For all I know, the government could make decrees, could be another revolution. I don't know what's going to be. I don't want to develop a taste, an appetite for meat, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to restrain myself if that ever changes. That's what he said. So you understand that the whole Torah is about self-control. And that's self-control. I don't tell you have to refrain from meat. I had a guy once, I knew a guy from a yeshiva here in Israel. Have you ever heard, there's a restaurant in America called Dougie's. Have you ever heard Dougie's? This is the rage. It's the rage in America. There were some guys there in Israel. Guys there in Israel actually sponsored one of the guys in the yeshiva. Each guy paid him $50. He got on a plane, flew to America, picked up an order and flew back, all within 24 hours for the guys in yeshiva, and that's spiritual. And so here, this is a place, this Dougie's is a place, Dougie's is a place where I think they have a $20 all you can eat, $20 all you can eat thing, which they take off the special when the yeshiva guys are back for vacation. Right? Because during the year, who comes in there? A couple of housewives come in, they have a salad and a soup, and a couple of drumsticks, and they're done for the day. They get these yeshiva guys there. By the way, you could fill a tin. When you're done eating, you could fill a tin, and anything that you could put into the tin, you're allowed to take with you. So you can imagine yeshiva guys sitting there, packing it down in the tin. So they take this stuff. So they have something called a monster burger. You have a monster burger, a monster, whatever, and it is exactly what it sounds. They have poppers, monster burgers, whatever it is. $20, $25, all you can eat. Now I like eating as much as the next guy. So guys were once telling me about this Dougie's place, and they said to you, you go into a side, they give you a little booth, and they give you a bib, and you can get a rack of ribs, and so at that point I lost interest. I haven't worn a bib since I'm 3, and you see the whole thing is you want to eat, you want to enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's a certain, don't make a project out of it. This is a project. $20 all you can eat. And you should see what these guys can put away for $20. We had a guy in another yeshiva. The guys are meant to be in the yeshiva. So a bunch of them are at the bus stop, and they're sneaking out of the yeshiva. So one of the mashgiach, one of the guys in charge, he sees the guys. He goes, "Hey guys, where are you off to?" He says, "We're going to Netanya. There's like 150 sheks all you can eat place in Netanya." So he says, "No, you're not. Back into the yeshiva." So he said, "Oh, Rabbi, we've been waiting for this all day. We want to go around." So he said, No, you can't go. One of the guys says, "I haven't eaten anything all day preparing for this. You got to let us go." So the Vilna Gaon says sometimes a person could fast. You could fast an entire day for an atonement. You're fasting for an atonement. And what you're really thinking about is that you're working up your appetite for what comes after the fast. That's what you're really doing. You're getting yourself geared up to go to work after the fast. That's what you're really doing. So the Torah is telling you that it's a law of self. It's an idea of self-control. You have to be realistic here, because when it comes to any of these areas, permissible areas in self-control, a person has to know what level he's at. If you're at our level, we are at the level of eat your food, make a good bracha, enjoy your food, thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for giving it to you. We are not yet at the level of the Vilna Gaon, who used to take his food, put it in his mouth, chew it a minimal amount of times to get as little pleasure as possible from this world, then swallow it. If you are at the level of the Vilna Gaon, let me know, right? Because then we have to talk. But most of us are not. I do that with chocolate cake, by the way, with frosting. I put it in my mouth and try not to taste it at all. You know that we're not at that level. Eat the food, enjoy the food, make a good bracha and bench, and don't. Somebody once said, eat your cholent on Shabbos. Eat up your cholent on Shabbos. Don't eat up your Shabbos in your cholent. Right? Some people guys eat cholent, and you could barely get to the next to the nearest horizontal surface because you're staggered. You don't have to stagger away from it. That's what the Torah is talking about. I heard about a guy. Have you ever heard of Rav Nissim Karelitz? Rav Nissim Karelitz is one of the biggest poskim today. He was one of the biggest poskim. He's a nephew of the Chazon Ish. Rav Nissim Karelitz. He lives in Bnei Brak. So he's one of the leading poskim in the contemporary world. So somebody once asked his wife what food he enjoys eating. So Rebbetzin Karelitz, his wife, said to him, look, when I first got married, I went to his mother to find out, what kind of food they enjoy. Because like any wife, I want to please my husband and make him food that he enjoys. So his mother said to me, in our home, we've never discussed food. We serve it, we eat it, people thank for it, say thank you to your wife. We never discuss food. She said, in all our married life, we've never discussed the food. I make the food, I serve my husband the food, he always thanks me for the food, but it's not something we discuss. Now again, you have to be at a certain spiritual level, because most people are not at that level. Most people would like to discuss, wow, that meat was really good, the chicken was really flavorful, that sort of thing. So you have to know very much what level you're at.
I would just say that the middle ground is that I'm pretty sure every animal that is kosher can be domesticated.
Okay.
So even if they're not
domesticated,
docile,
yeah, but they're not carnivores. They're no carnivores. None of them are carnivores. They're not carnivores. Number one. Number two, there's also the whole idea of chewing the cud, because by chewing the cud it softens up the food, which makes that makes the animal itself more consumable for us.
What does the hoof thing have to do? I can't remember exactly, because I know
the split hooves is one of the signs of the kosher animals. The split is one of the signs of kosher animals. But the idea, you see, again, let's not deceive her. Let's be honest. We like eating, and eating is very much a part of our life. And a person has to know it's very big. Sometimes people jump levels, and that could often depress us. Food is enjoyable, and as a Torah Jew, we do not lose out on any pleasure of life. There is no pleasure of life that is off limits totally to a Torah Jew. There's control on the pleasures of life, but we're not monks, and we're not people who are involved in self-flagellation. We have to live life as normal human beings. The only rule is self-control.
And smoked turkey rashers taste great.
What's that?
Smoked turkey rashers taste great.
So they now have, and if you really got to, they now have kosher bacon. And they've got kosher bacon. I don't know what they treat the turkey, and you can have a cheeseburger. You can have a cheeseburger two different ways now. You could have a non-dairy burger with real cheese, or you could have a meat burger with non-dairy cheese. So there's something called. Some people see the Torah as an obstacle course. We've got to make it through the obstacle course. Indulge just as long as you don't break the rules. That's not the goal. The goal isn't, let's satisfy nerve endings as much as possible with the rules. To the contrary, then you've missed the point of the rules. The point of the rules is to teach us self-control, not that we should live out of control within the rules. That's not the goal. The goal is self-control within the rules. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.